Good morning. Today is Wednesday, July 15th. I watched a program on the Weather Channel last night, and yes, I understand what a nerdy person that makes me to be, but it's all right. I like it. This program happened to be they were listing what they called the top 10 flash floods in recent history. I was interested in this because I thought that I could name four floods that might be on that list. Three of those that I was thinking about happened in Colorado, where I grew up. As it turned out, two of those four actually were on the list, and they were the top two. But what I was most focused on, and the one story that I thought might really be on the top of the list, turned out to be second, and that was the Big Thompson River flood of 1976. 1 year to the day prior to that flood in the Big Thompson Canyon, my family had a family reunion there. We rented a small motel, the whole motel, and we were all staying in little cabins. A couple of years later, we went back, and that entire motel was completely gone. It was an amazing event. My brother was a reporter in Greeley, not far from there at the time, and he wrote a lot of stories. He took a lot of pictures that had press, international press, even about the flood story. An amazing, tragic event where 144 people died in this flood. But in the story, as I was watching this program, there was one other story that really caught my eye, and it reminded me of a situation that I want to mention today. It was talking about a situation where a woman was caught in her house in a flash flood. And it was a very tragic situation because a lot of people were dying, in fact. She was caught in her house, and there was a torrent of water ripping at both sides of her house. When the flood got into her garage, it picked up her car and it smashed it against a gas line, starting a fire. So here she was in a house that's on fire in the middle of a deadly flood. She called 911 and was told, she was asking what to do, and she was told, do not leave your house. It would mean almost certain death. So what is she to do? She can't stay in a burning house, but she can't leave the house. It seemed as though she had only two options, and both were leading to her death. You know, it kind of sounds like the year 2020, doesn't it? Impossible choices being thrust and seemingly no other choice available. Right now, I'm sure that you feel as I do, that on all fronts, we're being thrust into the position of making choices that all seem dangerous. The world is telling us things that we have to make a choice one way or the other, and it seems like there's not good options in between. Either we start schools and thus support education, or we don't in order to be safe. Either we wear a mask everywhere we go, or we don't care about people. Either we agree with everything that the president does, or we're disloyal to America. Either we allow the political left to have its way, or we are haters. Either we take down offensive statues, or we don't understand history. Either we are racists, or we are anti-racists, in this case making up a new phrase that carries with it a definition that goes in some very questionable directions. Every part of our lives seems to be put into the grinder of social opinion, and depending on our choice, we're either going to be destroying our culture or we're going to be hating people. Seems like an impossible situation, doesn't it? Kind of makes you feel like, we're in a burning house in the middle of a deadly flood. No matter what you do, you're wrong. No matter what you think, you're wrong. No matter what happens, you're watching the world crumble all around you. I want to tell you today that as Christians, we do not have to be forced into catastrophe. We do not have to be tormented by these hard choices. In the middle of this chaos, there is another choice. You might be curious, what in the world happened to that woman in the house? Well, as it turned out, a third option came along. A neighbor on a jet ski rescued her just seconds before her house exploded. She had found a third choice. In the world of debate, there is a logical fallacy that is used to steer the argument towards an illogical conclusion. It's called the fallacy of the excluded middle, or the fallacy of the third choice. What happens here is that two options are given without considering that there might be a third option. I've actually seen this in a lot of ways, dealing with families through the years. Either that child, people will say things like that, either this child will do exactly as I say, or she has to move out. Either we live in misery or we get a divorce. Either we move or I'm leaving. Either she cuts off all contact with her family or I'm through with this marriage. Either he quits that job or he has to move out. In the heat of argument, illogical choices are often thrust upon us. No matter what the two options are, whatever we choose, it leads in a bad direction. Damage is done. People are hurt, and thus people are unhappy. But the reality is that in nearly all of these choices that our society is trying to thrust upon us right now, there is a third option. Sometimes it's a compromise. Sometimes it's just a time of cooling off and reconsidering choices that might be made. The difference between being forced into damaging choices and making healthy, positive choices, the difference between those is wisdom. This is the reason why the book of Proverbs puts such heavy emphasis on the value of wisdom. It's why the book of James encourages Christians to be practicing godly wisdom. Here we are as people who are trusting God in the middle of this society, and the society that wants to lead us in either or situations that all seem bad. Well, let me tell you, Christian, in the middle of this, there are other options. There is really only one decision that has no third option. And that decision comes down to this: either you believe and trust in God, or you don't. This is real. This absolutely is eternal. This decision, making the right choice in this decision, making the wise choice in this decision, gives us peace in all the other choices of life. We do not have to be pushed around by the opinions of others. As Joshua said to his people, "Choose this day whom you will serve." Once we prioritize that, everything else will be manageable. Christian, I hope you'll go this day and have a good day making wise choices.